I have very recently adopted RuPaul as a spiritual leader. Before we get into the bulk of the video, I have in fact cut my own hair today. Don't tell my sister, who is also my hairdresser. I'm Niki. I only talk about being gay apparently, because it is a natural substitute for having anything else interesting about myself. I came out in January to my friends and family, so this year has been a bit of a roller coaster, and then I came out online in February, the day before my 28th birthday. I'm old. As it's been 6 months or a little bit longer, I thought I would talk about things that I've come up against, thoughts that I've had, or experiences that I've had in those 6 months that maybe I wasn't prepared for, I hadn't thought much about, or happened, and I'm like, well, yeah, of course that's the duh. So I thought I'd share them with you. As they happen, normally when I'm having one of these thoughts where I'm like, oh, that's interesting, that's an observation that I'm having right now, I'll write it in my notes app. I'll just like leave a note. And so I thought I would like go through them with you now, 6 months on, to see if we can shed light on them together. Just from the off, I have very recently adopted RuPaul as a spiritual leader. And oh my god, he's so fascinating. So, I mean, look, this isn't really, I actually wrote on here, RuPaul is a spiritual leader. This is my note. So that is that thought process ended. I mean, I've been listening to his podcast. He could fix things. He could fix your life. So that is just a note. What we do? He says this thing, he uses this metaphor of taking things off the shelf. And I feel like this has been a real like transitional period in my life where I am taking things off the shelf and valuing them, and whether or not I need them in my life, or what they meant to me at a certain time, and do they still need to be there. I'll come against thoughts or constructs of thought that I've had for so long that now I look at and think that can come off the shelf. At the start of this coming out process, I kind of had this, especially when it came to content creation, I had this vibe of being not owning gay enough. I was like, how possibly could I talk about being gay if I don't own it? Like I felt I had no ownership of this, which I now realise now is so stupid. Like it's dumb. It feeds off this imposter syndrome thing with content creation, where sometimes you can make something online or you just put energy into something, you're like, hang on, what authority do I have to talk about this? And that's kind of why I came out and then made no content about it for like 3 months, because I was like, I can't talk about this because I have no right to. Dumb. Let's take that off the shelf because that's dumb. So I've written on my notes here, taking care of my inner child. I kind of know what I meant when I wrote that, but I wish that when I wrote notes I would elaborate a little bit more, because I'm like, I'll say a sentence or I'll write gibberish down and think, future Niki will understand what I'm saying. Well, past Niki, he didn't. I feel like I've done a few posts, especially on Instagram, where I've addressed my younger self, and I keep calling it my younger self, but actually I think it's my inner child. Has yet to go through the years that I went through of self-denial or self-suppression, and I feel like there's a need now for me to make amends with that younger version of myself. In doing that, I'm kind of having these revelations or reflections of myself where I'm like, maybe young Niki would have appreciated to hear this, and that has sort of become the driving point for all of my content at the moment. Young me, my inner child, could have had this information from himself. Like, essentially that is what I'm doing. I'm talking to myself here. Wholeness comes from within, not from outside. 6 months on, I'm still coming out, if that makes sense. Not necessarily to other people, because that was the benefit of doing a coming out video. I had like 60,000 people saw it. That's good. I'm done. Like, I don't need to worry about it anymore. But I'm quite proud of how quickly I've developed over the last sort of 6 months, especially considering it's been lockdown. I've not been able to leave the house. But yeah, I am proud of myself, and I feel like recognising that pride in myself, especially over Pride Month, the power of Pride Month, that was like nourishing my inner child who needed it. So this got deep, and I'm probably going to cut out like minutes and minutes and minutes of it, but my point was, I'm like re-evaluating who I am and learning it. I don't know, it's kind of like acquainting myself with myself. There's been a lot of hands going on. One thing, kind of this vibe of taking things off the shelf, which I'm going to keep using as a phrase because RuPaul, again, is my new spiritual leader. I'm like kind of recalibrating in myself what I expect of myself as someone that is a gay man. and it's really difficult to explain. I can't even verbalise that thought because I don't know how to say it. I perceive myself and also how I'm allowing myself to be now, if that makes sense. That probably doesn't make sense. Maybe this kind of ties into the not owning gay enough thought, like the imposter syndrome thing. I'm like, I had this facade of myself that I was using to navigate the world in, and now actually I'm like taking that off, and I'm sort of relearning how I can be and what I can allow myself to do. We were kind of having a joke between me and my friends the other day, and I was like, oh look, I can walk really straight. And I proceeded to walk as straight as possible, as in like a straight, okay, this is probably really problematic. I'm leaving it in. That kind of got me thinking the day after. I was like, that's really interesting. And now I'm like, I don't know, I feel like slowly chipping away to see what this version of myself is and what he can do. Briefly, but I think it's something that I'll expand on a later date, maybe like on Instagram or something, or a YouTube video, is the build-up of anticipation to coming out and what that can feel like. And for me, it's kind of like, if you've ever got drunk on a night out and you felt extremely anxious the next day, it's called the fear. I've only learned that recently. I used to get it all the time. I don't really drink to get drunk anymore. At uni, I did. Who doesn't? But I always used to wake up and feel like, oh no, what have I done? Like, where's this anxiety? Anyway, it's because your body builds up all this adrenaline, and it's like, cool, we can release it now, and you can feel all that anxiety that you would have felt last night doing all these extroverted things you wouldn't normally do. We're going to feel that now. So I kind of feel like that's a similar metaphor. One of the things that did happen is I felt very numb, and I think that is kind of also why I didn't upload anything about it, because I was like, well, it's done, you know? I don't know how to phrase it, but I just felt very like, where do we go from here? Like, what do we do? Where do I go? And I think that, again, plays into all of the other elements that I've spoken about. So I went on many tangents, and most of my thoughts are all over the place on my notes. Like, I'm looking at my notes here. It's really important that I finish this video with the big spoiler that right now, where I'm in my life, I have never felt wealthier in terms of love and affection from friends and family. I've never felt more open to other people. I feel like, and I said this in my coming out video, I felt very closed off. I'm at 100%, and if someone's talking to me, I'm engaged. So, inner child Nikki, I hope this video was helpful. If you guys have any stories you'd like to share about coming out, it doesn't even have to be about sexuality. Like, you can, anything you've come out about in your life, a big decision you've made or a big step you've taken, whatever it may be. What helped you? What advice would you give to yourself that's going through the build up to that decision? I would like to know. Yeah, please share with me. If you're new to this channel, please feel free to press the subscribe button and the bell next to it, because that is really good for my channel and good for your brain health. There's like an asterisk up here because I'm lying. Thank you for watching. Stay safe in COVID. I hope you're well, and let's chat in the comments.